Hello, Village Church. Good morning. What's up? Thanks for watching today. This devotional is from Monday, September the 14th. So today we are in Exodus chapter 13 and 14. We are talking about the crossing of the Red Sea. Now, last week we talked about how God delivered the Israelites from Egypt. But we didn't quite get to the place where they crossed the Red Sea. So there is like a day in between where they actually left Egypt and they camped at this location outside of Egypt, about, I don't know, just halfway between, the actual land of Egypt where they lived and the Red Sea. But they did go out and camp in the desert, and now they're headed to cross the Red Sea. So but as you know from the story, if you've ever seen the movies, there's a couple different movies out there that tell about the story of, the Israelites coming out of Egypt, the Great Exodus. What was one of them called? Oh, Prince of Egypt, I think. That was a good one with a bunch of music in it and stuff. And anyways, the Red Sea, crossing the Red Sea is a big, giant, miraculous event. And so that's where we are at today. The plagues are over. The Pharaoh says, go ahead, you can go, get out of here, basically. And now they have left. God says, consecrate, tell the story. He gives all the instructions for the Passover meal, which is like a way to remember what God has done. And now they are going out, and they're going to cross the Red Sea here pretty soon. So I'm starting... And I'm going to start at chapter 13, verse 17, and we'll skip ahead a little bit. So, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. Okay. For God said if they faced war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt armed for battle. Now, I actually went and looked at a little map here, and the quickest way, to get over to where they eventually ended up was this straight line across. But that was all through the Philistine land. So God said, no, we're going to go down and go down towards the Red Sea. And it was a longer journey, but God apparently didn't want them to fight the Philistines. So God led them all down this way. Okay. Let's go to chapter 14, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi-hahiroth. That is a terrible pronunciation of that town, or whatever that place is, between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh would think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So Israel did this. Okay, so then we'll skip a little bit ahead. Then Pharaoh and his army, he grabs like a ton of this army and in chariots and all of their stuff, and they have the Israelites are not ready for any kind of battle. They don't have armor. They don't have weapons, and if they do, they have some weapons and some armor, but it pales in comparison to the armor and the weapons that the Egyptians have. So, what happens is Pharaoh and his army comes at the Israelites, and there's some grand panic because they can't fight them. Israelites know that. They're like, oh my gosh, we are not ready for this. So in verse 10 of chapter 14, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. Verse 11, they said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Verse 12, didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. So this is some big time panic, and I can see why. They see the Egyptians coming from far off, and they're like, oh no, we are in trouble, and we are all going to die. I mean, so much so that they were like, we could have just stayed in Egypt forever. Why did we have to do this? Verse 13, Moses answered the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. Verse 14, the Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. Now, I have that verse underlined in my Bible because this, to me, is a big idea. A big instruction from Moses to the people who are in, like I said, panic mode. They are scared. They are afraid. They see something coming at them that they cannot win against. That they know, we are doomed, as C-3PO would say in Star Wars. We're doomed. And what is their first response? Of course, it's not like, oh, well, let's remember God just did 10 giant plagues and that totally decimated all of Egypt and all of the Egyptians. And so he'll probably protect us now. No, there's no train of thought like that. There's no thinking back to God's mighty acts and his faithfulness, thinking that, well, if he was faithful to us in the last few months during this time, that he would be faithful now. No, there's only panic. There's only that grand loss, the feeling that we get when we lose control, when we are scared, right? and they blame Moses, and they're crying out to the Lord. And what does Moses say? He says, the Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. To me, that is such a powerful word. Because I'm a control freak, in my nature. And I have to fight against trying to control everything. And that idea of being a control freak is like totally opposite of what God calls us to do, right? God says, rest in me. In Psalm 46:10, we have that big famous, very well-known passage that says, be still and know that I am God. And this is the same thing that Moses is telling them right now. He said, all you need to do when there's danger around you, when you are scared, when it's panic mode, okay, when there is something coming at you that you don't understand, that you are afraid of, what do we need to do? Do we need to panic? Do we need to try and control the situation? Do we need to try and fight with our meager, weapons and our meager armor? No, we're not equipped. We're not able to win on our own power. So what does Moses say? The Lord will do it. The Lord's going to fight for you. You just need to be still. Let's see what happens. The Lord said to Moses, verse 15 of chapter 14, tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. All right, skipping ahead a couple of verses, turning the page. Okay, so verse 21, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided. And the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with the wall of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and the cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. So here's God doing what he promised to do. He is fighting for them. The Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, And the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen and the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the great power the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. Wow, awesome story. Incredible miracles that God is doing, fulfilling his promises to Moses, to the Israelites. And I just am captivated by the instructions to the Israelites here that Moses gives to just be still, to let the Lord fight your battles. I think that is something we can carry with us today, right now, in this crazy world that we are living in, where there seem to be battles all over the place. Is God calling us to just be still? Could he be calling you to be still? To let God fight the battles? Wow, wouldn't that be awesome if we spent more time being still and praying and trusting in him than we did getting out there and fighting? God's power is so much bigger than our power. His hand is so much greater and mightier than our hands. Why do we insist on fighting the battles ourselves? We are not equipped. We are not strong enough. We cannot win on our own power. So I encourage you today to be still and let God fight the battles. Have a great week.